Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. Indeed, quite a busy day with our CV Autumn Volunteering Congress taking place in Brussels these days, but I'm more than happy to find the space also to join you and try to share with you some ideas, what we've learned over the years around validation of learning acquired through volunteering and how that can also help you to strengthen the European Solidarity Corps and the work that you are doing there. So at CV and in the EU, we generally tend to talk about validation of learning. In Council of Europe circles, they speak a bit more about recognition, but essentially means a bit the same thing. And in Europe, when they speak about recognition of learning, usually they're speaking about mutual understanding and acknowledgement of certifications from different countries. So really in a European, in an EU context, we speak mostly about validation of non-formal and informal learning. And at CV, of course, Centre for European Volunteering, we're very interested in how we can harness this potential for the validation of non-formal and informal learning for volunteers. One thing I should say before we start is that we believe very strongly that this validation of learning outcomes, things that you learn while you volunteer, should always be the choice of the volunteer. It should not be imposed. People volunteer for many reasons. Learning should never be the main reason why you volunteer. If your main intention is to learn, then rather look for a training course, rather look for work experience, rather look for a traineeship, rather look for something that is tailored specifically for learning. But of course, when we volunteer, we do learn. And when we learn, when we volunteer, some people like the idea and understand that it can be interesting for them to have their learning validated. From the EU level, and here you can see an image is a little bit stretched because I tried to make it as big as I could. It's from the European guidelines for the validation of non-formal and informal learning. I will mention a bit more about these guidelines later. It's now the third edition. But this picture has been used since 2016. So you can see that even for the first edition, we were very clear on what we could understand, what were the 4 stages of validation. So the first thing is that somebody needs to understand that they have learned something. So they need to be able to identify what they have learned. And for that, they need support. And I guess in this MOOC, probably you've spoken or will speak at some point about mentors, about tutors, about the role of the support network that exists around European Solidarity Corps volunteers. And one of the key roles that we can see for mentors, for tutors, for these people, maybe not the manager, maybe not the task manager, maybe not the line manager, but rather somebody who is more interested in the development of the person, the ESC volunteer, can help the ESC volunteer understand what they have learned. Maybe it's not so obvious. Maybe they don't understand that they have learned. Hard skills are easier. Maybe they learned how to, I don't know, create a spreadsheet, or maybe they learned how to write a project proposal. So, hard skills are maybe easier to identify. But when we come to soft skills, empathy, teamwork, creativity, it can be more difficult for people to understand and to acknowledge and to recognize what they have learned. So the role of the mentor, the role of the tutor, the role of the supporting network around the European Solidarity Corps volunteer is very important to help the volunteer identify what they have learned and what's important for them and why it's important for them. Then the next stage is documentation, because eventually if we want to get to assessment and we want to get to certification, we need to have some evidence of what you have learned. So here we can talk about video clips, photographs, interviews with colleagues, journal entries, be as creative as you can about how the volunteer can document what they have learned. It shouldn't be necessarily an essay, could be an essay, could be something that they really write a long thing in their journal about what they have learned. But really more than ever, it's often input of colleagues. So you probably have heard of something called the 360 evaluation approach. So when you ask family, friends, colleagues, other people about what they think that you have learned, this can also be very interesting, a way to document what the volunteer has learned. Then you can start to think about assessment. So even if the volunteer is saying, I think I have learned this, even if the volunteer mentor is saying, I think that this volunteer has learned this, probably you need an independent party to be able to say, yes, I agree, they have learned this and they have learned it to this level or standard. because you need that kind of authorization, that kind of accreditation, that kind of assessment, if you're going to go forward and produce a certificate, either you as an organization, or you in collaboration with perhaps a formal learning institute, or you in collaboration perhaps with the national agency or local authority. So you need some way of assessing, is this true? And of course, the documentation goes a long way towards being able to assess, is this true? So maybe for every learning outcome, you want to insist on 3 pieces of evidence, for example, and that can form the assessment. So these are the 4 phases of validation of non-formal and informal learning. And I think there is fairly stable kind of agreement across the non-formal learning and education sector that these are the 4 stages. You don't necessarily have to do all 4 stages as part of a validation journey. And again, we're talking about volunteers. We're talking about volunteers who have voluntarily joined their project, their European Solidarity Corps project, in this case that we're talking about today. On top of that, they have voluntarily agreed to take part in a validation process. And equally, they should be voluntarily allowed and be able and know how to step out of the process at whatever stage. So maybe they want to step out after stage 1, or during stage 2, or after stage 3, or even during stage 4. So when you set up your validation process, and when you're offering validation of learning to your volunteers, you don't only think about how to introduce them to this system, how to make them know that this system is available, but you have to also let them know how they can step out at any stage. And if they want to step out at any stage, it's really no problem. There's no obligation around this. This is an added value that we bring to volunteers. And we think from the Center of European Volunteering that there is often a particular added value to this around people with fewer opportunities. This can really bring an added value if, apart from their general volunteering experience, they can also have this certification of specific competencies. It can be very useful for them for their futures. This slide you can probably not see, but don't worry, you can see it on the video, and I think this should be possible to share the slides. This on the left is also an excerpt from the European guidelines for validation of non-formal, informal learning. And just what I wanted to point out to you here is this is a schema of the potential stakeholders in validation and their roles. So you can just see from the list, even if you cannot read them, that there are different parties that need to be involved. So don't think as a European Solidarity Corps, a coordination organization, sending, hosting, whatever the new terms are now, whoever you feel that you are within the Solidarity Corps, that this is not something that you have to do alone. It's probably not something that you should do alone with validation. So there, of course, are the individuals involved, civil society organizations, business sector. I think somebody mentioned before, we have to understand what the maybe not business sector, but employers, what are they looking for? What kind of skills are they looking for? What kind of certification are they looking for? How can we produce a certificate which is most useful to volunteers? That's something that employers are really going to recognize, and acknowledge and understand. Maybe just to say, we are clearly talking about learning outcomes. Certificates which are talking about hours volunteered or days volunteered, they can be useful, but that's not really pinpointing the skills. It's not pinpointing the learning outcomes. So when we talk about validation of learning, we are really looking at what has the volunteer learned through their volunteering journey. Then we also have education and training institutions. Maybe for the certification part, there is more value that the certificate is provided by a formal education institution. Those of us from non-formal education sector, we probably feel very uncomfortable about this. We hate this. We say our certificate should be as good as anyone's, but we have to be real. We want to give volunteers a certificate that will be useful for them in their future careers, in their future education paths. So, don't be proud. Talk to formal education providers. Maybe a collaboration with them for the certification elevates the certificate to be of a higher value because it's been acknowledged as important and it's been acknowledged as supported by the education, formal education institutions. And then there's some references to regional and local stakeholders, national stakeholders, European stakeholders, so all the European agencies, etc. And this is the picture of the validation guidelines. And when I made these slides in the last few days, I saw that they're not producing any more paper versions. So you can find it nicely online, even though it still has the nice front cover. This is another resource that I wanted to show you. Again, I don't know how clear it is, but you wouldn't have time anyway to absorb it all now. This is from an Erasmus Plus project that we were involved in some time ago, and you can find here the URL. So it's a project called OBVAL. And most of the questions that we had around validation from different stakeholders involved, volunteers, organizations, volunteer centers, because we represent volunteer centers, so we are representing the volunteer support organizations in the regions and countries across Europe. You know, what does validation mean to me? What does validation look like for me? And we made these journey maps. So here you have the journey map of the volunteer, you have the journey map of the volunteer involving organizations. So maybe that's most of you. You are the ones hosting, involving the volunteers. And then you have the journey map of the volunteer centers. And so that's the support organization that can help you with the validation arrangements, can help you, put you in contact with the formal education institutions. They can help you with the different resources, with translations, these kind of things. So this is maybe an interesting resource for you in terms of putting yourself in the shoes or asking the volunteer. If the volunteer is not sure if they want to be involved in this validation story, you can ask them to look at this journey map and say, okay, do you see yourself starting on this journey? And again, at any point that they want to drop out of this journey, they can. You have to, I think, make that very clear to them. But this is something that you can offer them as, you know, an added value to the volunteering opportunity that you are giving them. Another project I wanted to draw your attention to is this one. The URL is Lever Project EU, Lever Model Standard. And this project was particularly looking at transversal skills. So assessing and certifying hard skills, you know, can you, I don't know, build a web page, or can you make a spreadsheet, or can you make an event plan? You know, these things are fairly easy to assess. It's more or less a kind of yes or no. Can you do it? Can you not? But assessing transversal skills and competencies, which we know from employers are increasingly important. Employers are increasingly interested in the hard skills they can teach you themselves. You can go on a course and they will teach you what they need to teach you for the job. But what they're interested in, again, I don't know how clear it is, but they're interested in, is this person empathetic? Does this person know how to learn, learning to learn? Is this person result orientated? Is this person a good team player? Can they take initiative? Are they flexible and adaptable to different situations? So these are all the kind of cross horizontal competencies, and we group them in personal skills, methodological skills, social skills, organizational skills. But this is all on our website. You can click, you can find all the things. And what's maybe interesting about how we did this project is that we match the levels. So how empathetic are you? How much empathy have you been able to prove to the EQF levels? I suppose that you're all familiar with European Qualifications Framework levels, maybe more or less. So you know that if you finish primary school, you're at one level, secondary school, another level, first bachelor degree, another level, master's degree, another level, etc., etc. So what we did in this project is that we mapped the levels that you prove to the EQF levels. So it wasn't just saying, yes, this person is empathetic, yes or no. It was, this person has shown basic skills in empathy, or this person has shown exceptional skills in empathy. And therefore it equates to an EQF level 3, or it equates to EQF level 7, for example. Yeah. So that's also interesting. And it's maybe something also that volunteers can really challenge themselves. You know, at the beginning now, I've been assessed, I've been certified, I'm only a level 3 for empathy. Okay, in the next 6 months, I want to try how I can get to level 5 for empathy, for example. So it can really be used for targets, and it can be used for really a better and more nuanced certification. That's not just yes or no. It's a lot of work, of course. It takes some investment, it takes some understanding. There is no suggestion that everybody should try to do everything. People should focus probably on 1 or 2 competencies during their volunteer placement, especially if we're talking about European Solidarity Corps. But I think they can, with their mentor, they can identify which competencies they would like to improve on, and they are the ones that they can focus on during the placement. And this schema can really help with targets, with ideas, with measurements, with certification, etc. So I think it's a really useful resource. Another resource I wanted to share with you is another Erasmus Plus project. Erasmus Plus has been good investing in this story, and great that all of this investment from Erasmus Plus can also now be shared and used by European Solidarity Corps stakeholders. This is a project actually that's just finished, and this is based in the fact that we saw that validation was happening sometimes somewhere in different places, but there was no really understood quality standards. There was no really understood what does an organization have to do to be able to say, yes, you know, we are doing really good validation. So this project was developing what's called the quality standards of validation and learning. It's available in 6 languages, the manual. It's also available in this link. And you can see here in this schema, hopefully, so that there are general standards for everyone, and then there are standards for specific stakeholders. So are you a volunteer involving organization? Are you a formal education institution? Are you an employer, even maybe, if you're involved in employee volunteering, for example? Are you, a smaller volunteer organization, a bigger volunteer organization? So the standards are specific depending on what kind of organization you are. So you also have to kind of dive deep and see which of the standards apply to you and which maybe don't. And this is the front cover of the manual that's also available online. The last thing that I wanted to mention, so we spoke about transversal competencies, these cross competency, empathy, creativity, flexibility, etc. But another interesting resource is this resource. I don't know if you're familiar with it, which is the ESCO portal. This is a really interesting portal, I think. So if, for example, here we put youth worker, we can find the skills. So normally, of course, it's not going to work now, I do it live. You can find all the skills that a youth worker should have. So if your volunteer, if your European Solidarity Corps volunteer is volunteering as a youth worker, you can use this portal to understand what skills that youth worker should have, and then think about identifying, documenting, assessing, and certifying those skills. So if you're not sure exactly what skills correspond to which role, particularly for specific roles, so volunteer manager is also there, youth worker is there, administrative assistant is there, nurse is there, doctor is there, all the things that you can think of. And this will help you very much to identify which are the skills that you might need to validate for a volunteer taking that role. So it can really help you to inspire you. And of course, the list of skills is very long. And then you have to think, okay, which skills do you want? And you have to discuss with the volunteer, which skills do you want to improve? Which skills do you want to develop? And those are the ones that we are going to focus on. So I hope I didn't speak maybe just too fast, but I know that you have the recording. You can go through it a bit more slowly. You can look at the resources. You can see how these kind of approaches to validation can help you as an organization deliver better quality volunteering placements, how you can offer added value to your volunteers, how you can potentially make your volunteering more attractive to people with fewer opportunities, people from excluded groups, because very often their main focus has to be to improve themselves, to find a better job, to find better prospects. And if alongside the volunteering, which of course has huge benefits for the community, huge benefits for the volunteer, you can also offer a quality validation of learning process alongside that, then that's another added value that they can take from the situation. Maybe just a final message, and then I'm available for questions, discussion. I'd be very interested to hear your feedback. Don't try to do it alone. Look for support. So look for partnerships with formal education institutions for assessment and certification. Look for the volunteer centers, local ones, regional ones, national ones. They probably have training courses for this for you. They have guidance for this for you. Look at all the resources that I shared now, and also maybe search around. Maybe there are others. You don't need to invent something from the start. There are many resources that you can use. So that's what I wanted to share with you about validation of learning. So validation of non-formal and informal learning, but particularly that non-formal, informal learning that happens while you are volunteering, and especially within the European Solidarity Corps, that we know is a rich source of learning and development for all of us. So good to see you all, at least see most of you. And yeah, if there's feedback, comments, questions, I'm ready to hear them.